Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we have a special guest today on the channel, Kristian Kohle. How you doing, dude?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be on this channel. Thank you.
So we're going to talk about a few things. You have at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have a lot of amps. You are really into amps, setups, guitar tones. You have some wonderful sounding IRs, which I have been using with my band and on tour. I love amps, and I thought we would go ahead and talk about some of our favorite metal guitar setups. And I also thought we would touch on your new course with Pro Mix Academy. It's called High Gain Guitar Tone Crafting. And you know what? I thought we would just geek out a little bit. And for those of you at home that are playing along, this is just, I don't know, this is to give you some kind of a reference as to what maybe other people have used. But if you want to really utilize your own setup and your own guitar and amp, Kristian's course shows you exactly how to do that and utilizing your own stuff. And also, this is not a sponsored video. However, the links down below in the description will be affiliate, but this is just kind of two guitar geeks hanging out and nerding out. But dude, thank you so much for hanging out. Really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, I'm sure that will be a total nerd fest for both of us. You know, we both love guitar amps and we both love all kind of guitar gear, so this will be great. But yeah, what I'm trying to teach in this course is that people should not try to copy my guitar tones or your guitar tones or anybody else's guitar tones, but they should learn to create their own unique guitar tones. So I'm trying to show them the big picture, so to say. I don't want them to get lost in the details, you know, in EQ notches at 4.5K or something. I want them to be able to create their own vision about a guitar tone, and I want to show them the methods and the mindset how to get there. And I'm also talking about something that I call the tone matrix, which is a puzzle which consists of a lot of puzzle pieces, which are like the pieces of gear that you own. Your guitars, your pickups, your pedals, your amps, your plugins, your speakers, your microphones, and they can be put together in endless combinations. And the more you master this, the faster you will be at creating great sounding guitar tones. So that is the idea. But yeah, I'm actually working on 3 different songs in that course: a modern metal song, a vintage rock song, and a death metal song. And I'm showing, you know, everything from scratch to the finished mix, final product. And people can download the multi-tracks and the DIs and work on the tracks themselves. So I hope this course will be a lot of fun.
I feel it brings up an interesting point, because I'm always telling people, know what your gear can do, but in that same thought, know what your gear cannot do.
I just feel like it really helps to stop for a moment and first of all to analyze your taste. So what do I like? What do I don't like? What are the guitar tones that I like? That's the first thing you should learn. What do I want? You know, some people like bright guitars, overcompressed, saturated, high gain tones. Other like dry and raw tones, whatever. What do you like? So that's the first analysis. And the second should be an analysis of the gear you own. Because if you know how the gear works, so how you can put those puzzle pieces together, it's just a lot easier, you know? It's not just a shot in the dark, because you know, like, if I combine this with this, you know, probably I'm gonna get closer to the tone I want to find.
Okay, so in that vein, let's go ahead and dive into some of our favorite metal guitar setups. We have each chosen 3 different setups, and maybe I'll learn something. I'm gonna learn something. Maybe you will learn something. Maybe you won't learn something. But I think we're gonna get super nerdy. So I would like to start with your first setup, sir. What is it?
Well, I was thinking, like, what is this setup that I have used the most in 20 or even 25 years of Kohle studio here, and that is the Mesa Boogie Rectifier. I have a very old 2-channel version, and that is surprisingly, maybe it's not the 5150. It's the dual rectifier that I have used on most productions, and that is for a reason, because it is a really special amp among the, let's call them modern high gain amps, and it's also quite versatile in a way, because if I have to characterize a dual rectifier, it has a very special distortion, a very dry and dynamic, not oversaturated distortion, and it doesn't, and not too much distortion, by the way. I have to crank mine, I think, to 1 or 2 o'clock to get into high gain, and it always stays dry and not as saturated as the other amplifiers. That's one thing. So the distortion is unique and very dynamic, and then it has the biggest balls of pretty much all the amps that I know, and that's what some people don't like about the rectifier, because it can get out of control if you don't have a tube screamer or an EQ or something that is like rolling off the lows on the way into the amp. It has that characteristic rectifier bite that is coming from, I think, from the power amp, where I think there's no presence limit or something. It's just very open sounding, and it has that classic scoop mid-range, and I think that frequency, that scoop mid-range, is the reason why I have used it so much, ironically, because the cool thing is it works in a, let's say, brutal death metal context, where you have the guitars cranked and it just sounds brutal with the upper mid grind and the low end. But it can also work in a Nickelback situation where the scoop mid-range leaves space for the vocals in a cool way. And that's why I love this amp. More dynamic than most other high-gain amps. Very unique spectral, like, frequency response, and very versatile.
I totally agree. I own 5 of them.
5?
I've modded one. I have a Rev D. I have a very, very early rectifier, Rev D. I have a Rev F. I have a triple rectifier. I have a 3-channel modded. I'm the rectifier nut. And
which one is your preferred one?
The FJA, believe it or not, the 3-channel modified rectifier is one of my favorites. Probably the Revision D. It has it's voiced a little differently, so it has this weird upper mid, because the earliest rectifiers were actually meant for the hair metal of the 80s, and they were just too late. So the really, really early, I think it's serial number 330 or something like that.
Oh, wow.
It has this weird upper mid kind of bark that's very 80s sounding, which also I think Richard Z prefers as well in Rammstein. It sounds like a Rammstein record. It's so good. We're gonna make a separate video geeking out on rectifiers. I think.
I also have I think mine is serial number 700 and something, so it's also very old. But I still always had the impression that mine sounds a little darker and a little fuller than the later 3-channel models. But
very, very true.
Okay, if you don't A/B them, sometimes you can be wrong. But awesome amplifier.
Awesome amplifiers.
Your setup.
Okay. My first setup is what I would call entry point heavy. And this is gonna be, I don't know if you would consider this modern metal, but this is like a very Alice in Chainsy, grindy, thick tone that starts with a humbucker equipped guitar, Gibson Les Paul, something like that, and either a modded or a hot rodded amp like a Marshall, Friedman, or a Soldano, into like a vintage 30 cab, or mixing vintage 30s with greenbacks, and mic'd with the 57, and you get this real thick, just a real thick guitar tone. Specifically, I'm talking about like my Soldano SLO 100. It's not the craziest, most modern, tightest amp of all time. However, what it does offer is just this really nice mid-range, and it can take pedals very well. It has a great clean channel, but it has just this wall effect. If you put this in a mix, it just is this wall of guitar thickness, and I think it's just perfect for these slower tempoed, mid-tempoed Alice in Chains type of music, and it's so good. Friedman as well.
I agree that, like, especially modded 800, like that mid-range, is just very, very, I don't know, very special. It just sits right in a mix. It's very different to a rectifier, kind of the opposite thing, but those Marshall mids have always sounded I don't know, yeah, maybe a little more rock and roll than metal. But then you said like they take pedals well. So I have done quite a few records with 800s, and it feels like all the metal kids have forgotten about them because they still work in modern high gain context. If you ask me, it's just a question if you want those Marshall mids or not. Yes. I also like do you know the Diezel? That was their next take on getting a little more modern. I also like those amps because they have that Marshall tone, but you don't need to mod it and you don't need pedals.
Totally agree. Yeah, I think the DSL series is like I don't know, you can pick them up cheap and they're a total sleeper amp. You will get great tones out of a DSL.
Right.
All right, what is your second favorite guitar setup?
If we're talking about mids, so if you ask me which amp has the most, let's call them sophisticated, complex, and sexy sounding mids, that would be over there, this Diezel D-Moll amplifier. I love pretty much all the Diezel amps that I've heard. And by the way, the Diezel Herbert is, I think, the only amp that has the same amount of low end like a dual rectifier. This Diezel amp, people think that the D-Moll is kind of like the little brother of the Herbert, but to me it sounds very different. The Herbert goes more into that rectifier land, and this one here has the thickest mid-range and the most, I don't know, complex, expensive sounding mid-range on all channels that I have heard. So and the distortion it feels slower, it's more saturated, more compressed than a dual rectifier. But ironically, I use this amp almost as much as I use the dual rectifier, despite the fact that everything is the opposite. So rectifier scoop frequencies, this one rather boosted mids, a lot more saturated, compressed. This one is more dry and raw, but it just works. I don't know what they did, but they managed to give this amp a lot of mids without sounding honky. A beautiful amp. Also a sleeper. I don't think many people are using the D-Moll. Have you ever played it?
No, I actually have, over here, Diezels are not very common at all. The Diezels that I've played, they do have a commonality in the mid-range. You can get the mid-range from one amp to the others that I've played. I've played the Einstein, the Herbert, a VH4. I think it was a 2. Might have been a 2. I've never played a 4, but I don't know. They have a sound that, and there's it's crunchy up top, but it's not fizzy. It's not unusable crunchiness, but there's a lot of complex harmonics up at the top end, and I don't know. I don't think anything sounds like a Diezel.
Yeah, I think that they just feel and sound expensive. That's how I feel. Expensive is not always good, but Marshall to me never sounded expensive, and Marshall also the build quality, it can be like this or like that, but Diezel seems to be very true to the cliche of German engineering or something. You just play, it feels so solid and it sounds so solid, just very well done. And still, the amps have a different character, and I thought they were very popular in the US after I think it started with Metallica and Korn. I think they were bringing Diezel to the States 15 years ago or something. I always thought they were very popular, but
I was at Tom Morello. I was guest instructor at Tom Morello's guitar camp right before COVID, right before the last NAMM. And Billy Howardell from A Perfect Circle was one of the instructors, and I was hanging out with him, and I just offhandedly mentioned Diezel, and he was Adam Jones's guitar tech for the Anima record, and he's the one that brought in, at the time, one of the earliest VH4 Bluefaces to Adam. It was him that was like, I think that, we were just looking for some different sounds, so I ordered this super expensive German amp, and it showed up 3 months later, and I brought it into Adam, and we used it on the entire record, and that was that. I was like, whoa!
I think Warren you had also told me that he was working in a studio, and like in the next room, Limp Bizkit were rehearsing or pre-producing. And I think Wes Borland was also using, I think, a Herbert back then. The funny part sometimes, me being from Germany, is that the prices are so different. For us over here, Mesa Boogie has always been super expensive. And what I learned was, and on the other hand, Engel amplifiers have been rather cheap in comparison. I mean, they're not cheap, but a lot cheaper than a Mesa Boogie amp. And the funny part was, I learned that when I spoke to American people that because they paid so much more for the German amps with taxes and stuff, that they had this huge respect for certain German brands like Engel that we had for Mesa Boogie, So the price will always, influence your...
Yeah, over here, you'll see Mesa Boogies kicking around in pawn shops like it's no big deal. So, yeah, that's funny.
A Rectifier is still, I think, twice as much as an Engel amp, more or less, Depends on which one you take. But, yeah, Mesa Boogie is luxury in comparison to Engel. It's funny.
Wow. Yeah, hey. Yeah, thanks, countries and import taxes. Okay, so for my second guitar setup, I'm gonna call this one Your Dad's Metal, and this is going back to the Marshall classic kind of 80s Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and even I guess you would say Slayer, because they're all using such a versatile amp. Something like a JCM 800 can be used in so many different ways. A JMP, Silver Jubilee, even a Plexi. You take your basic humbucker guitar, you get a Marshall, even if it's not modded, you can do Zakk Wylde and just stick a Boss overdrive in front of it and instantly get that kind of real nice mid-range. You're not going to get a ton of low end like we kind of touched on before, and you're just going to get this nice compressed guitar tone that really is just mix ready, which is especially handy in a live situation where most of these amps lived back in the 80s. Tube Screamer, Boss overdrive, basically any 412 cabinet will get you there for something like a Marshall, a modified Marshall, something like that. It can be greenbacks, it can be V30s.
Yeah.
It can be really whatever.
I agree that though, like the new breed of like modern metal monsters, high gain amplifiers, they do take, especially pedals, not as good as the old Marshalls, and there's just a difference between those generations. Marshalls still live, like especially the Plexi, still live from at least a touch of power amp clipping and power amp saturation. Even if you play pedals, you need to crank them a bit, and that just gives you a very different distortion, very different tone from those hyper extreme modern amps that have their tone,
right,
and where all the gain, all the distortion is coming from the preamp, and the power amps are totally clean. Take the Herbert, a good example, 180 watts or something, just to get a tight low end. So you're never gonna get that low end from a Marshall Plexi, but normally you don't need it. But the cool thing is those amps just sound great right out of the box. If you don't play technical death metal or something.
And I think it's a real testament to the amp design that, you have a Plexi and an 800 used on a Slayer record and also a Bad Religion record, also on an AC/DC record, and also on an Iron Maiden record. Those bands are so different from each other, but that amp is so simple and so stripped down, and it's just amazing. One of my favorite amps that I own is the Silver Jubilee, which is not an 800, but it's definitely related to an 800.
But you know what? It's I just played the Silver Jubilee plugin, the UAD plugin, and that is, I think, the only plugin that I use because I think it's well done. Even the cabinet sounds pretty nice, and I have to buy that amp. I really need that amp because I love the plugin, and it's kind of in between the different Marshall amps and. Really, really interesting amp. And it's funny what you just said. I think the last real classic amp that was released, because you said you can use an 800 on a lot of different genres. Same thing is true what I said about the Rectifier. I don't know when the Rectifier was released, early 90s or something, but...
92, yeah.
That's the same quality, you know, that you can have Nickelback and Limp Bizkit and Cannibal Corpse or someone play a Rectifier, you know. So that is a true classic too.
Okay, so this is going to be your third and final metal guitar setup. What is it, sir?
Well, I mean, I love a lot of amps. I think I own something like more than 20 or is it 30? I don't know, tube amps. But I wanted to find something that sounds really different and a lot more dirty. So I want to talk about my secret HM2 desire, so to say. You know what I'm talking about. That legendary Swedish death metal Boss HM2 Heavy Metal 2 pedal. So I've never played in a band where I could use it, but I've always secretly admired that dirty, filthy tone. But the problem was always, I'm sure you have played an HM2 and it actually sounds like shit, you know, and it sounds like broken, and it's no real fun to play it because, yes, it has that chainsaw frequency going on, but, you know, you can't tell a palm mute from an open chord, and it's, you know, if you want to sound like a band like Nails or a band like Rotten Sound, and I love those bands, that works, but for everything else, the HM2 is just too broken or something. So, but what I like is, what I do a lot is, and I started doing that in my productions, was to combine that HM2 distortion with, let's say, any modern high gain distortion. So combine a Rectifier, a 5150, a Diezel or something with another track where I mix in the HM2, and so I can blend this. And then finally, I don't want to make too much advertising here, but finally I came up with my own pedal, the Grindstein pedal, where I could do exactly that. It has a blend knob where I can blend like the HM2 fuzzy section with either anything else, or there's like an inbuilt second channel. So it gives you the control over, or you can have the amount of chainsaw and filth that you want, and it's not just like sounding good or sounding shitty. And that fuzzy distortion has always, and that with that 1K peak there, maybe it's my age because I grew up with that 90s death metal or something, I don't know, but that, I don't know, if I hear that kind of tone, I just, you know, I just want to open up a mosh pit and you know, and break something.
Yeah, love that. That's cool. I actually, the very first heavy metal that I had when I was 19, 20, something like that, I was in a punk rock band, and I assumed it was going to be in the vein of like the hyper metal or a metal zone, but it's not. And I actually thought my pedal was broken. And then fast forward, and this whole time, 20 years ago, I thought that pedal was broken. I actually bought a very, very pristine, made in Japan, early one. It's like the most desirable one. It sounded like that pedal, and I was like, wait. It's not broken. It just sounds broken.
Yeah. That was what inspired me to come up with that pedal, because I said I like the idea of the HM2, and that also happened to a lot of guitarists who came here, because I also have an original Japanese version, and they said like, finally I want to play it, and you know, and that was mostly really disappointing. And I can also tell you that most like cool sounding HM2 productions actually don't use that all men play on 10 HM2 section. Right. There's actually, you know, there's mostly something mixed in or something else to get that HM2 feel. And that's why I came up with the Grindstein, just to give a little more control over that, you know, the HM2 madness. But what I think is interesting is that it started with Swedish death metal, but now I think any genre where people want to sound more dirty and less mainstream, they use the HM2. So you know, Converge, Kurt Ballou, I think he's so that is very far away from Swedish death metal. And then a lot of the sludge and the doom bands and all those guys, they all love the HM2. So there's something magic about that shitty pedal. It is shitty, come on.
That's what we love about it. Okay, so for my third and final setup, the classic core metalcore sound is something that, you know, now it's kind of a parody now, but at the time, you know, you had bands like Killswitch Engage and Unearth and all of these core bands, metalcore bands, having just the first time I heard The Oncoming Storm from Unearth, that was the heaviest damn thing I had ever heard in my life. And that was an active guitar. It was an active, you know, I think they were using Ibanez, active Ibanez guitars into a 5150 boosted with a Maxon OD808 into a Mesa Boogie 412 cabinet. So simple, so effective. That tone for me is just, that's such an easy go-to flavor for me. Ironically, I don't use it that much. I much prefer the, you know, the Mesa Boogie Rectifier with a boost kind of a thing, because it's a different sound. But, you know, something like Suicide Silence's, you know, Black Crown, that was, that got a lot of people into the Rectifier, but previous to that, they were using 5150s. And now they're back, ironically, to EVH 5150s. So, you know, but anyway.
Which I think are better sound. We also have an EVH here. I think they sound better than the old one, but I haven't A-B'd them. Because I totally agree, that's also like a classic rig by now, and it totally works, of course. On the other hand, it's very well known for sounding generic, like you said.
Yep.
And I have never been in love with the 5150. And people, until today, everybody goes like, what the fuck? The 5150, you know, if I mention my 10 favorite metal amps, the 5150 is not in there. Not because it's bad, not at all. It's a good amp.
For sure.
But mainly because I prefer other amps for some reason. Then people tell me, but hey, listen to Machine Head. And then I said, yeah, but I have listened to Machine Head, and I never liked that guitar tone. It's good, you know, but 5150
it works for
always,
them. Yeah.
5150 always sounded, to me, it sounded a little too thin. You know, I'm more a rectifier guy, so I want more balls.
Same.
So a little too thin. The mid-range was always kind of honky, so I was trying to fix something with that mid knob, and it never worked. And the highs, when you crank them, they sound a little transistor-like. I don't know if that's a good description. So I never, or maybe I'm too stupid to dial it in or something, but I never really fell in love with that amp. And I felt guilty for it. I used to feel guilty for it. But these days it's kind of cool because, you know, everybody likes the 5150 and I'm the guy who says, no, it sucks.
Ooh, man. Okay. Leave your hate comments down below, guys. Leave the hate comments down below. I mean, I will point out that I have a very early block letter 5150 and it is currently in my storage unit. So I have one though. I have one.
By the way, I would love to, we have the EVH Stealth version here, which is the best sounding 5150 that I have heard. I would love to do a shootout here with a original block letter one and with what's it called? 6505?
6505, yeah.
Like all the three. I would love to see if there's a difference. And or maybe I think I should do a 5150 video one day just to find out that I actually love it. Maybe that's
I mean, I did a shootout with the 5150 and the 6505 and the mini 6505. Most people prefer the 6505 because it has an upper mid thing that takes care of those mids that you were talking about from the earlier one, and it sits in a mix so much better. So
you have to send me that link. I wanna watch that one. I haven't.
Yeah, okay, I will.
That sounds very interesting. Okay, yeah, thank you.
And so with all of these, you know, I want to talk about your IRs. I want to tell you what a huge fan I am of your IRs that you have made. I use them in my setup. I use them all over the place. Actually, I have them loaded in my Helix. I use them with my plugins. I use them in my touring setup. And you have some new IRs that I wanted to ask you about. Can you tell me a little bit about them?
Yeah, first of all, that makes me really happy and really proud that you are using them. Thank you very much.
They're so good.
Yes, I have just released a new IR pack, a much bigger IR pack, like my signature IR pack. And this one is called Rainbows and Chainsaws. And I've released it together with Bogren Digital because, you know, I'm pretty close to Jens Bogren. He's one of the greatest metal producers out there.
Yes.
And yeah, we talked about this and we decided we want to release this together. Great company. And I had the idea of having like this duality in a pack, you know, a bright side and a dark side. So what you will get in this pack is a bunch of really good sounding IRs, like the ones that you know, but not only from Eminence, but a lot of different speakers. I think 15 different speakers somehow combined.
Wow.
And then there's the dark side, the chainsaw side of this pack, where you will get some unusual IRs with a lot of characters. Some sound a little HM2-ish, some sound like black metal, some sound like doom, but you know, really unique sounding IRs. And then in the end, you can also blend them. So you can have like a good sounding V30 IR with a touch of chainsaw or a touch of black metal or something. So I think it's a pretty versatile and interesting pack.
And what is it called again?
Rainbows and Chainsaws.
I love that.
Yeah, if you can, put a link below.
Okay, well, I'll link down below. I will link down below. And with that, dude, thank you so much for hanging out, talking about our setups, nerding out. We're gonna make a second video. We're gonna nerd out just about rectifiers.
I will come back anytime. I love your channel. Okay. It's awesome. I want to come back.
Thank you. Okay. Links down below if you guys want to check out Kristian's course, IRs, his channel. Please go give him a sub. Lots and lots of good stuff. I am a huge fan of yours, dude. Thank you so much for your time. And with that, we're going to get out of here.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All right. See ya. If you liked the video you just watched, please consider subscribing. And if you want to further support me and what I do, consider using some of the affiliate links down below in the description of this video. Go on over to Sweetwater, buy yourself something, and help me out at the same time. It's a win-win for both of us.